Okay, why was this project undertaken? I start off in a general sense that I guess DAFWA saw this as being a project of significance, in some ways transformational. The opportunity to make a quantum difference to agricultural output in this state. A lot of projects we do are very long-term in nature. This particular project is inherently, well, it's capital intensive, as we'll see, but it also has the promise of significant short-term returns on that investment. So, in addition to that, we see it as being a chance to enhance our competitive position, or perhaps just catch back up to where we were with areas such as the US and Europe, where much of this technology is currently available. It allows us to assist with risk management tools at a time of increased uncertainty, so it helps with farm management decision making in difficult conditions. It has the potential to provide greater data surety towards the potential development of insurance products in the market. Now, we've seen that fledgling market starting to emerge. One of the great weaknesses in that is the availability of reliable data, and what we're talking about here is the opportunity to fill that void. And then, as Peter mentioned, some of our potential high-level investors, as was touched on by KPMG this morning, will be looking for insurance products, will be looking for data, the sorts of things that they know are available in other developed economies, in order to encourage them to make that what is sometimes seen as a risky decision. DAFWA, as you know, has a focus on doubling of agriculture. So we did pose this question to ourselves, is this particular project likely to contribute to us achieving that outcome? And I guess my personal answer is indeed it will. As I said, it enhances prospects for investment and development in the sector. It improves our supply chain access and efficiency, e.g. real-time marketing, decision-making, and varietal selection that's appropriately targeted to climatic conditions. It has potential for improved yields, accurate input application, and indeed lower costs arising from that. Labour substitution through, for example, driverless machinery, which is a technology available and being trialled and is really going to depend on the access to mobile reception. And then finally, I note down the bottom, and it shouldn't be lost as we go through this, is that what we're talking about here, weather information and mobile receptivity, have rather significant welfare implications in the rural sector. Very hard to quantify in this sort of exercise, which often boils down to hard dollars and cents, but we shouldn't forget the fact that they do have major implications on that front. Very briefly, the project outline. We engaged Consultants AEC Group early last year. They are based over east, and that did bring with it some challenges in terms of project management at times, and hence I'm here, I guess, reporting on their work as opposed to them being over here doing it. We received that report just before Christmas. They consulted Telstra and BOM, amongst others, in developing their project, and I should note that we focused on two elements of technology. There are plenty of others, but these are two that we thought hold the greatest potential for return on investment. So, turning to our mobile phone coverage, to date government's been focused on regional population centres and on major roads. So they've invested significant amounts, as you can see from those numbers, and it will eventually result in some 200 mobile towers being built in population centres and along major roads. What does that do for our agricultural community in terms of the farm businesses? Not a particular lot. So we asked AEC to look at it. They said, well, there's still some 5.6 million hectares without mobile coverage, and they estimated that we'd need something in the order of 122 towers to cover that area, and that because of their relative isolation and because of the fact that they weren't in population centres, of course, that they would cost around $1 million each, which is a safe estimate, I think. Just giving you a look at the map that covers where they currently are located. That purple splotches you can see around there are the population centres and the roads that have been covered in this first tranche of regional mobile coverage, and that some of the gaps in those areas along the roads and some of the distant communities will receive coverage in the coming 3 or 4 years. I think that this next lot of 40 odd towers go up. But when you look at it from an agricultural perspective, and you look down that middle through the agricultural region, through the grain belt, you can see there's pretty limited coverage through there. In terms of what will mobile coverage, in terms of farm businesses, what will that achieve? Well, we're all familiar now with apps, things like productivity, communications, weather data access. They're the things that we're looking to bring to farm businesses in situ, in the field. Variable rate technology, an important element of technology, sealed and yield constraint mapping on the go, prescription mapping, variable rate technology, etc. Marketing services, real-time offers on live shipments. That's one I heard a number of times during the conduct of this project, was operators saying, well, I missed out on a particular live sheep shipment because I'm out of mobile reception, and it was people closer to reception who were actually picking up those sales. Farm machinery and servicing in situ, in other words, with mobile reception, problems on machinery can be fixed where the machinery is located rather than having to get it back to home base where there might be reception. And as I mentioned earlier, driverless tractor operation. Yield profit, optimising fertiliser application and agronomic advice in the field. And then I come back to this considerable social benefits, including occupational health and safety and emergency services. They're all things that businesses in the city have to expected to be able to cover and respond to. Of course, for farm businesses located in very isolated areas, that's far more of a challenge. I think it was the Keogh report into drought provisions that highlighted the considerable social dislocations experienced in farm businesses because of their lack of access to mobile coverage, which people living in cities take for granted. In terms of the business case, racing through this, we've talked about a 20-year project life, and we did for both of these. We felt that was a reasonable time frame for technology, which marches on at an increasing rate and could well see mobile towers become a thing of the past in the not too distant future if they are to last 20 years. Installation over 5 years, total cost of $181 million. That includes replacing radio components halfway through their productive life, and $136 million net present value. The benefits on the plus side were costed only from variable rate technology changes at an average rate of uptake, and the benefits they estimated from that were $238 million, and that gave us an average BCR of 1.75, which is a positive and fairly solid return on what is a substantial benefit. And as I note at the bottom, that is likely to be fairly conservative because there are a lot of elements of both the tangible returns from things like marketing, etc., as well as from the considerable social benefits left out of that analysis. Okay, moving on to Doppler radar coverage. The only high-resolution radar coverage in WA is located in Perth. I note that it has Doppler functionality, but that's turned off. Without dwelling too long, I think doing this exercise I realised fairly quickly that WA has got the short end of the broom on this on radar coverage quite significantly. I quizzed the BOM guys about is there a David Jones and a Target Doppler radar, and they did let slip that the big centres over east, including Adelaide and Brisbane, all have the $20 million German radar, and WA has the off-the-shelf Target variety, which does say something about the way they viewed the need for radar in Western Australia, and which is a lot about certainly non-land-based activities. The agricultural region's not largely covered. I'll come to a graph on that. Doppler just means it's introducing directional information, so you get direction on where rain and wind is coming from. AEC and BOM have estimated that 3 Doppler radars would be required to give majority coverage of the agricultural region. That has to be combined with the fact that Ag has some 135 automatic weather stations, which provide valuable point information on climatic results, and that information, when combined with Doppler radar information, can produce a very a valuable source of information to allow plotting of weather, and we'll see some of that later on. Doppler radar is estimated to cost around $5 million each, and then you've got the operating costs. I've just recently had the opportunity to go through submissions to the Ag Green Paper from a number of other states, and it's interesting, this question. It's something we raised in or DAFWA raised, or the government, raised in the response to the competitiveness issues paper. It was interesting by the time it's come round to the competitiveness green paper that a number of the other states have picked up on this fact that their ag regions have very poor weather information, and it's interesting they're now starting to push from their end to get the sort of thing that I guess this ball that we've started rolling here. This is the current Weather Watch radar network. The black dots, which you can see quite a few of, or triangles on the east coast there, that's supposedly the high-resolution Doppler radars. And as you can see, we have the one in Perth. I'd also note that there's one in Esperance, but that's a very low-functioning and unit and in bad need of replacement. And then the sort of information that we can get from those radars, particularly the Doppler radars, is information on thunderstorms, which are those very intense little units on the left, so that there is an add-on, if you like, to the packaging of the Doppler information to allow the tracking of thunderstorms. And of course, we can see the rain bands and then the cold fronts. AEC and then BOM proposed that, as I said, we could get coverage of the wheat belt with 3 Doppler radars. It's obviously a majority. It's not full coverage, and they've suggested locations at Woburn and I think it was Merredin and Lake Grace to give that sort of coverage. It's interesting if you look at the coverage from the existing radars, which are the ones around the coast there, you'll see their coverage inland is very truncated in most cases, and that's because we have escarpments. So the Perth escarpment essentially blocks out any sensible information from beyond that. And similarly, you can see up at Geraldton, we don't get very great coverage once you start to head inland. The applications, better information on whether WA land holdings are becoming more diversified. This gives some tactical information for farm operators to employ in the field, decide on application of inputs, stock movement, marketing, harvesting, etc. Risk management we've talked about. And again, at the very bottom, I've got those social benefits, which I come back to. And in addition, the environmental benefits which arise from less chemical loss into the environment. The business case, again, I'll touch that briefly because I'm going to reach the end of my time. It's a 20-year period, 3 towers. BOM estimate about $27 million for installation and then operation over the period. Benefits derived are assumed to derive from savings to chemical application. Now, there are obviously savings from fertiliser application as well, and there will be other savings on top of that, things like yield selection, variety selection, sorry. So the bottom line of that is a net present value of savings of around 165 million and a BCR, a very solid BCR of 6.1:1. The sorts of things that we see from Doppler radars, there's a package that BOM have called rain fields, and you can see that this is the rain. On the left is a single point in time, and on the right is the map they're able to derive using rain fields. We would be planning over here with our much finer level of automatic weather stations to try and get this information down to more paddock level, which is the sort of results they're getting in the US at Purdue University, for example. And similarly, they can do short-term rainfall forecasting up to 12 hours, so you can get rainfall forecasts up to 12 hours using a STEPS program that BOM have. This is some short-term stuff. I think it's 6 minutes, 30 minutes and 60 minutes ahead, so you can get a projected rainfall for your area in that coming period based on the information from there. And then finally, where to from here? Well, obviously, we've entered in a phase of industry consultation. We're separating the business cases for funding for royalties for regions, and the Doppler radar case is going first. And obviously we're circulating it to relevant federal agencies and a body such as Telstra, because we need the involvement of BOM and Telstra. And this, because I've said BOM would operate and maintain the radars within their network, even though the radars would be owned locally. And that's a very quick presentation of a couple of major elements of technology and very, very, very substantial projects that are now underway.